Hi, I'm Old Norse Specialist Jackson Crawford. Let's do a quick Old Norse lesson while I've got a background or upground like this to work with. The EO stems are a type of feminine noun that you're not going to run into real often. The best simple example is herðr, meaning shoulder, where we have accusative and dative herði and genitive herðar. So notice that we've got that nominative singular R marker, which will remind you of masculine nouns, used to actually be on a lot of feminine nouns as well in a Proto-Norse, Proto-Germanic period. But this is one of the few types of nouns of which that survives in our well-tested language, Old Norse. And then in the usual way for feminines, the plural, nominative, and accusative are going to be the same. In this case, herðar, herðar, and then your usual genitive, plural, dative, plural endings, a, Another fairly typical type, and actually the most common noun of this class, except that the nominative singular R has assimilated to the S at the end of the root, so that you just have nominative singular ux, not uxar, is axe. So ux, accusative and dative uxi, genitive singular uxar, and then just like heather, nominative and accusative plural uxar, uxar, and then your usual genitive, dative plural a, So practice with veður, hunt, or the act of hunting. Pause this video if you need while you think about how that would be inflected. Well, I hope you got veður, veiði, veiðar, veiði, veidar, 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 veidum. Of course, if that sounds a little bit like Vader, I did use it as part of the name of a character modeled on him in another life when I did the Star Wars as an Icelandic saga thing. Try one more. This is actually a noun that you will often see in Havamal. Byrður, that means burden. Pause. Think about how you'd inflect that. Well, you ought to have gotten byrður, byrði, byrðar, byrði, byrðar, byrðar, byrða, byrðum. And now you might understand why in Havamal Odin says, at least in 2 stanzas, that you can't carry a byrði betri, right, accusative singular, better burden than wisdom. I'll give you a quick word from my friends and partners at Grimfrost in the usual way, and I'll come back and tell you about the really common place where you see these nouns, which is this noun type, which is feminine names. So many women's names end in that nominative singular R, and they are inflected as EO stems, which, of course, since they're names, are only going to be seen in the singular. So, for example, Audr, very common woman's name, we get Audr, Audi, Audar, Audi. Or Gerðr, Gerðr, Gerði, Gerðar, Gerði. Names that end in Hildr, meaning battle, Dis, meaning goddess, Ríðr or Fríðr, usually shortened to Ríðr, which means beautiful, or Un, which means love, are going to inflect like this too. So Brynhildr, Brynhildi, Brynhaldar, Brynhildi. Thordís, Thordísi, Thordísar, Thordísi. Sigríðr, Sigríði, Sigríðar, Sigríði. Idun, Iduni, Idunar, Iduni. Keep in mind, of course, always you knock that nominative singular R off before you add the other endings, just like you would with a masculine noun. So there's lots of compounds with these names. See what you can do with Þórunn. Pause and see if you can inflect that woman's name correctly. And of course, that's one where the nominative singular is assimilated into the N at the end, just like with Ux, where it's assimilated to the S at the end. Well, there you would get Þórunn, Þórunni, Þórunnar, Þórunni. How about with the woman's name Jófríður? Horse pretty. Pause, see what you can do with that. There you ought to have gotten Jófríður, Jófríði, Jófríðar, Jófríði. All right. One other rare place where you will see this type is actually a very seldom seen survival in Germanic of the Indo-European feminine ending ich, or IH2. See my conversation with Anthony Yates recently about early Indo-European languages for a little bit of discussion of this ending. So one of the very few places this survives, which is actually one of the really characteristic feminine types in, say, Sanskrit, we have like Devi, Varki, goddess, she-wolf, is in the word for she-wolf in Old Norse, which is Ulgur, probably from something like Wulkwi in Indo-European, and of course that's actually cognate ultimately with Sanskrit Varkis. And so this is going to go just like the other yo stems, except we're going to have an intrusive, not intrusive because it's actually part of the stem, but a J that's going to show up before the endings that start with A or U. So we're going to get Ulgur, Ulgi, Ulgiar, Ulgi, Ulgiar, Ulgiar, Ulgia, Ulgium. There's only two other nouns that actually work like Ulgur. One of them is, and actually those two nouns both mean basically evil woman, right? Evil or monstrous woman. So you've got Gygur, common word for like troll, woman, witch. So Gygur, Gygi, Gygyar, Gygi, Gygyar, Gygyar, Gygia, Gygyum. And then you have Ruger, which is etymologically like the slanderous, the one who slanders, the lady who slanders. So of course that's Ruger, Rugi, Rugyar, Rugi, Rugyar, 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 Rugyum. It's kind of interesting that such an ancient formation that is such a standard way of forming feminine nouns in a language like Sanskrit is just basically lost in Germanic and crops up only, I think only in North Germanic. I don't think there's any Gothic or West Germanic examples of this type. And basically for three nouns that all mean like evil female thing. So this is the noun type of evil female things and women's names and axes and shoulders and moorlands. So it's not a really big type, except that a ton of women's names you're going to encounter are going to be this type. Well, I hope that you're following along with these Old Norse lessons, that you're making use of the resources on Patreon. One of the main resources is just reaching out, right? Post questions on the community page or in comments. I'm also going to start doing a weekly, or not weekly, but maybe something like monthly Old Norse language workshop where you can come chat on Zoom and bring your Old Norse language questions for me. Make sure that you're getting this grammar material and working through any readings that you're doing on your own. Well, for now, from high up in beautiful Utah, I'm wishing you all the best.